Hello and welcome back to another video, and today Milestone has released the first gameplay of MotoGP 21. So as I do every year when the first gameplay is released, we're going to be going through and breaking it down. So as you can see, it's only 2 minutes long because it's just one lap of Jerez, but there's actually quite a bit to pick out just from that one lap. Before I do quickly start, the link to this video will be in the description, so if you want to watch it without me talking over it, you can do. But let's get into it then and press play.
Peggy 3. Peggy 3.
So they jump the start and get a long lap penalty, so that's the first thing of note. And now I will pause it just so all the UIs on the screen, we can have a look. So as we already know from the previous trailer that we got given in the press release, we have got the long lap penalty, and there you go, that is an example of somebody getting the long lap penalty for jumping the start. We'll go back to that a little bit later because they do actually serve the long lap penalty later on in the lap, so that will definitely be something to talk about. But first of all, let's break down the UI a little bit. So, as you can see, it looks like we've got a live timing tower on the left-hand side of the screen now for the first time. Usually, that comes up when you go over the line, but it actually seems this year that we have it live on the left-hand side always. It tells you the gap in front and gap behind as well, just like the real-life MotoGP broadcast, of course, how they have it tells you the gap to the rider in front, gap to the rider behind. And it actually looks like, as well, next to where it says the Miller 43, you've got the gap to leader as well, because 4/10 probably would be about the gap between Marquez and Miller at this point, because they're extremely close. So you actually get the gap to the rider in front of you, the rider behind, and the race leader, which is really, really cool. Hopefully we'll get to see that in online, but probably not, because the timing tower isn't usually there in online, but I feel like that would be really useful for like a league race, so you can see a gap to the leader, see how far you are behind. And since we're on the left-hand side of the screen, may as well have a quick look at the track map, so you actually get the full view track map rather than just a little bit of the map. And you get to see, obviously, where you are on there. It's not particularly interesting because it's just a track map, I suppose. But instead of it being sort of zoomed in, it's actually the full track. And you can also see as well at the final corner, you can see yellow here is the long lap penalty. So I'm not sure whether that's just yellow if you have the long lap penalty that you need to serve, or if it's just always yellow. So as we can have a look after they've served it later, see if it actually changes colour. So if we move over to the right-hand side of the screen, you can see this section here has been completely changed. Obviously, where it tells you your revs, your throttle, your brake, your speed, your gear, your tyre temperatures. You've now got the brake temperatures next to them. So obviously there's the brake temperatures there. The actual shape of it is completely different. These are the rev lights here as well, going up each side. So interestingly enough, actually, that's more similarly shaped to the Ducati. So I wonder whether the gauge actually changes when you change bike, because I think they've done that in previous games before. I don't think they've ever done it in the MotoGP game, but I think they've done it in the ride games in the past, where depending on your bike UI gauge is different. So it'll be interesting to see if they release any more gameplay, if that gauge looks different, if they use a different bike, but to me that actually definitely looks like Ducati shaped gauge. So that actually is quite interesting. I hadn't really thought about that the first time I watched it through, but now I look at it, it does look like kind of a Ducati shape. So I wonder if it changes with each bike. We'll have to see if they release any more. But probably the most interesting thing you'll notice from this section right here is all of the different settings. And there is now a Power Mode 3 that they're currently in, and an Engine Braking 5. Now whether there's also 5 for traction and anti-wheelie, I presume not. I presume they've probably left it on how it always is on the start. So Power Mode 3, I'm guessing, is an even more powerful version of Power Mode 2, because if we're being real, Power Mode 2 made no difference, really. You could do the same lap time with 0 and 2. It didn't really seem to make much of a difference at all. But speaking of this, we'll start playing again and we can have another look at the fuel system, because there actually is something that is a little bit changed. So go down towards the first corner, then it's made up a few positions. You can see on the right hand side, actually, that I did forget to mention, he's got a little long lap penalty indicator telling him he's got the long lap penalty. Telling him or her, of course, don't know who's playing the game. And you can see here the physics seem a little bit more forgiving in a way. The rear end isn't sliding out as much. You can see if we play that section again, this is probably actually a really good section to watch it through. We've gone a little bit too far back there, but you see the braking down into Michelin Corny going in. They've got on the power, the rear is not sliding whatsoever. Flicking the bike over, again the rear is not sliding. So a common complaint from most people for MotoGP 20 actually was the fact that the rear slid way too much. So it seems like they've addressed that. It does seem to be behaving a little bit differently. For me, it was never really an issue, but I know for a lot of other people it was pretty annoying and they didn't like it very much. And you can see now on top of the riders' heads, obviously there already was the name tag indicator, but now it's more like the real-life MotoGP font for the indicator. So you can see it's got the name, it's got the team colour, got the number, just like in MotoGP in real life on the timing tower. It's now above the riders' heads with the name tag as well. And I'll just quickly pause it again here, just to talk about now what's changed on this side of the screen. So you can see obviously there's a little bit of tyre wear, but the most important thing is this here. So the fuel gauge now says +1 lap. So I believe they've changed the fuel to be a bit more like the F1 games, where it tells you how many more laps of fuel you're going to have after you finish the race, which does require a lot less maths. If you say it's positive, you're good. If it's negative, you're not. So you don't have to think about it so much on the fly, and I think that will make it a little bit more clear, because in some cases it wasn't great last year, because last year it kind of was a little bit unclear at times. It would tell you how much fuel you actually had left in total, and it was just how much you had left in the current engine mode, which is fine, because I guess it would have got confusing if it was, you know, how much fuel you had left if you're in power mode 1 and you're in power mode 2, it's burning away really fast. But at least you'd see it go down quickly rather than just instantly sort of change from one amount of fuel to another. But I think it is better just to have how much you have left after the race. Obviously in qualifying, it'll probably be different. I'm presuming it'll just tell you how many laps of fuel you've got left. So here they go then, out of the Dani Pedrosa corner. I think we'll probably just play this to the end now, well, pretty much the end, without stopping, because we've kind of pointed out most of the things that are worth pointing out. A bit of a stoppy there you saw going in. You can see the front is kind of pumping a little bit as well on the way through that corner, so I don't... Oh, okay, they got away with that one. Going over that curb, it seemed like it snapped quite a bit there, but they got away with it. And you can see here, actually, so I said I was not going to pause it again, but I completely forgot about this part. It actually tells you here, when you're getting towards the end of the lap, to serve your long lap, because you've got 4 laps left to do it. Now, I thought you only had 3 laps to do it anyway, but maybe in the game it gives you 4 for some reason, so whatever. But we'll keep playing it. But there is actually a few things of interest to note with the physics, so I might go back through and just point out a few things that I've noticed. But you can see the front end does look quite twitchy, actually. Petrucci's up the inside now, so Petrucci doing pretty well. He's gone up into 4th place now, he's dive bombed it. But here we go, here's where the most interesting part. We're going down towards the last corner, and you can see they go wide here, into the long lap penalty. Through it they go. I don't know whether I think that's the rider actually still riding through it. That kind of did look a little bit automatic though. And there you can see long lap penalty served. And yes, on the map, it was worth pointing out, because on the map it's just greyed out if you don't have a long lap, and it's yellow if you do have one. So that's quite interesting. So we'll just keep it playing again, because I've just noticed something else that I'd like to mention. So we'll just go back 5 seconds. You can now see that it seems to tell you your previous lap times, because here, obviously, I didn't actually mention the timer before, but there's no black background anymore. This year there was a black background, and that was kind of left over from the old graphics set. They kind of had to adjust the graphics set midway through the game cycle, because they made it with the old graphics in mind, and then Dorna were like, oh, we've got these new ones. But either way, they've got the timer without any background on it now. It also seems like you actually get given either your previous lap or your best lap, or maybe all of your laps. Well, I'm assuming it won't be all, because that'll take up too much of the space. It's probably your best lap of the race is displayed here. Again, we won't know until we get shown like more than 1 lap worth of gameplay. But yeah, quite a few things on the UI. That's usually what you can tell from these kind of videos, the main thing being the UI. You can tell a little bit from the physics, so I will actually go back and quickly just sort of talk about a couple of things I did notice at different points. So I think into here is quite worth noting. You can see they kind of got a stoppy on the way in. You can see the front was kind of wobbling as they went the whole way through the corner, which is probably to do with the new suspension physics. You can see the bike is definitely behaving differently to how it would in MotoGP 20 under the same sort of loads. It seems like the front is just kind of wobbling a little bit. It looks like they've almost they've caused themselves a little bit of chatter, because they've gone in so fast with they've like done a stoppy on the way in, and then the bike has just got so much weight on the front. The front was sort of wobbling through that corner. So it does actually seem like these suspension physics are quite improved, because you wouldn't have got anything like that on MotoGP 20. The front would have just washed out, or you would have just not felt anything. But you can see the bike is sort of oscillating around different corners. You can see that again there. So this improved suspension system definitely actually, it seems quite nice from what we've seen. Obviously we won't know until we get the game, but it seemed pretty good, to be honest. So fair play, they've made a very decent improvement there, I've got to say. Can't fault them for that at all. I'll quickly just watch the long lap penalty again. So as you can see, he's going into it, but then this like looks very AI controlled, if you ask me, that section there, because the way they were turning is not how they were turning around the rest of it. Now, I'm assuming that would make sense to have this AI controlled, because you'd be pretty annoyed if you went into your long lap penalty and then you actually missed it. I guess that would be quite annoying, but I would like the option to be able to control your bike through your long lap penalty, because it's just another part of the game. Obviously, it doesn't say auto drive anywhere, but just judging by this riding, it's very AI-like, although it actually could be just an AI that did this whole thing anyway, because they do that so nice. You can obviously set an AI to control a rider. However, they were a little bit erratic for an AI, so I think that's maybe what they've done. I think it's actually, this whole thing might be AI controlled, so it actually might be possible to ride through the long lap yourself. I don't know if it's actually a person playing. I think it might be an AI, so I think that might be what that's about. So we'll have to see. Maybe if they do a Q&A or something, we'll have to ask them, because obviously that was definitely an AI riding through that long lap penalty, but I hadn't really stopped to think that perhaps it was an AI riding throughout the whole lap. But that's pretty much it then for this first gameplay breakdown. I don't know how long this video's been. Probably not too long, because of course there wasn't a massive amount to talk about, but it's very, very interesting. This time of year is always really, really fun to have a look at what's released and sort of break it down a little bit. But I hope you did enjoy that one. If you are new to the channel, which is definitely possible because you might have found this out in the wild, do feel free to like and subscribe, because I do MotoGP game content all the time, and when MotoGP 21 comes out, I'll be doing loads of content on it. When any gameplay is released, I'll be doing more videos, trailers, things like that. I'll be straight on it, so if you want to keep up with that, this is probably the best place to be. But like I said, I hope you did enjoy that one. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Hope you're all staying safe, and I shall see you in the next one.